And Lori, are you doing the invitation? I'm sorry. I needed to ask. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, welcome everyone to the disaster fundraising session of the Hampton Conference and Awards Ceremony. We're happy to have everyone here. As we may have some folks joining us for the first time during the conference, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping items with our Zoom platform. If you'll please remember to utilize that mute button in between speaking, that'll really help everyone be able to hear pretty clearly. Also, please utilize that chat box throughout the session to ask questions, and we'll take them as we go if time allows, but we'll also take remaining questions at the end. If you have any technical difficulties during the session, you can reach out to Ashley. She's labeled as the tech0.tech, so you can address her anytime you need it in the participant section. Also, our sessions are recorded, so this one will be recorded, and materials from the session and the recording will be made available after the conference. And with that, I'd like to introduce Carlene Anders, Executive Director of the Disaster Leadership Team, and begin from there. So Carlene, over to you.
Hello, thank you for inviting me to the conference today. And I will be sharing some of our successes, more on the line of my direct information with wildfire in Eastern Washington. So I am the Executive Director of the Disaster Leadership Team and the Mayor of the City of Pateros, and the Executive Director of the Okanagan County Long-Term Recovery Group. So just a little bit about the Disaster Leadership Team. It was started in 2016, and it's a national nonprofit volunteer group that just basically a pay it forward group who has had some help with partners and things. And so they are mentoring one-on-one with leaders of upcoming and new disasters. So it's kind of a unique role in terms of the WAVOAD, or excuse me, the National VOAD. So we're happy to do it. We've got members all over the country. So. All right, today what we will cover is key concepts of good disaster recovery and key types of fundraising, who can help, case statements, timing, and media, and then making a video. And if you do have questions throughout, we'll try and answer those as well, but we'll try and push through. I do have a fair amount of information. So key concepts of good disaster fundraising. The number one thing is it's about a story, and you need to know intimately your story and know what you need so that everybody has the same talking points, and that it's very clear what you're going after and what you're doing. You need to create a fundraising committee that has capacity and contacts, that's well networked. It's amazing what people can come up with when you brainstorm at the table, if you have the right people at the table. And so that is a key piece to fundraising. You need to give yourself time to do the steps you need to do to be successful. And everything, of course, takes time, but you need to be strategic about that time. You need to estimate needs accurately, because especially like for us in our rebuild situation right now, OSB went from $6 a sheet to $81 a sheet, right? So when you start your fundraising pieces, make sure you have a little bit of a buffer, but you don't overinflate your ask. That's really important. Also, plan strategically with a completion action plan and a timeline so that you stay on task and know where you're at all times. So these are a few of the key types of fundraising that we did and that many people do, is the capital campaign, matching campaign, crowdfunding, and events. And I'll kind of go through the ones that we did and the way that we did those. So the capital campaign, of course, is you're looking at your major gifts being a very small percentage of your total number of people, but it is the highest percentage of your gifting. And so you're looking for your primary donors, your major donors, and those folks come out of the woodwork like you can't believe. It's and you have to, again, have that right networking, trying to find those key people that are interested in what you're doing. And so then as you go through the pyramid, your smallest folks that earn money are also your biggest number of total donors. So again, you want to try and get those major gifts and then work your way down to the smaller gifts. And we're looking at usually the planning stage is about 3 to 12 months on that. And we did our capital campaign to do rebuilding phase 1 and phase 2, and that was right around $5 million for the total that we were looking at. Matching campaigns. So part of our total capital campaign was a piece within that was a matching campaign. And we had an anonymous donor that put up $250,000. And so within that, we decided to do that at our 1-year anniversary. And our fires were on July 17th. And we started this matching campaign piece July 1 of 2015. And we knew who the matching donor was. And we planned for about 4 or 5 months getting some ideas of who could match up to 75% of the total. And then really it was crowdfunding that finished off the piece. But we basically in 17 days, we officially raised $256,000 of matching funds. And that gave us $500,000 of what we needed directly for the rebuild project that we did. So with that, so basically with that matching campaign, we tapped into the crowdfunding piece of it during those 17 days and tried to get everybody who could possibly be involved that had funds, either GoFundMe accounts or different pieces, to come in and be part of that 17 days. And it created this huge momentum. It was socially driven, and it really helped everybody be involved. And one of the beautiful things that happened, we went till midnight on the 17th, and at 10:15 in the evening, we had a large event that was happening at that time. And I had a very small girl, maybe 8 years old, walk up to me with her Ziploc of coins. And she says, did we make it? Did we get every dollar? And I got to tell her yes at that point. And it just goes to show that everyone, if you set up your campaigns correctly, then everybody can feel better in a disaster as part of that process of funding. Are there any questions at this point?
Carlene, I don't see any in the chat box at this time.
Okay. Thank you. So the things that you do have to do when you're doing your crowdfunding is you have to maintain control. Facebook, of course, gets a little bit out of control when you do some of these projects. but it also builds that excitement. And so we were able to, like I say, folks were calling and actively involved until the 12th hour of that campaign. And it really made a difference in how involved people were and whether they were tracking what everybody was doing within the community. And it's again serves twofold. It's very therapeutic and very helpful. All right, and then you really want to make sure you have a current system that for report out. They need to know exactly how much is in at that moment, not just you know, a week down the road, but they want to be involved, knowing where you're at the moment. A lot of what we did and what other folks do are events, and I would encourage folks to, when they do events, is to make sure that you have somebody else that is not you in charge of those events. A lot of times fundraisers try and take on those coordination of those events. People have great ideas, but you need somebody that will lead that piece. And then they need to do the advertising as well as you for those events. This is one of the events that we had. This free event raised $10,000 in one night. And everyone, all of the singers and all of the folks that came brought a donated small appliance for survivors. And they brought, it was an incredible, so the value was way beyond the 10,000, but everybody again has some kind of involvement. So who can help? Make sure and partner with people that can help. This young lady was 19 years old when she wrote Wildfire in her bedroom. And she was a face of our campaign through all of our fundraising. And it was, and she did concerts, she did events multiple times over. And so find out who is in your community that can do those pieces. So, and of course, with Hurricane Harvey, one of the most quick pieces, Chris Young did this in Texas. Some of your folks that you have big attendees and big famous folks can do those pieces for you too. Okay, I want to move on to the case statement. The case statement is one of the pieces that I would highly recommend anyone who's fundraising prepares ahead of time. This is absolutely critical in your fundraising because you can hand something to somebody and have that discussion, and they can see it, they can feel it, it looks different. So again, you want to know your story well, and you want to be inclusive in that story, and then make it very professional. So this is the cover of our case statement for that, and I'm going to kind of walk through the key elements of the case statement. So you want to be, you want to do your homework and be accurate with your data. That is really critical. And that instills confidence. If you say there's so many homes lost, or this is what's happened, you better be right about it. Make sure that you know exactly what's happened and that it's true and accurate. And also, just that story is compelling. Just your data in the way that you create it and write it up can be very compelling. You need to explain who you are and explain what you do and be very visual with your photos. It's very clear in this example here what's happened. very quickly. You see compelling pieces. All right. You need to use quotes of key people. So the top quote here in our case statement was from our governor. And you can use those right out of the FEMA declarations directly. Oftentimes those stories tell a great deal, and a lot of people never access those FEMA declarations. I've used that multiple times. You need to show collaboration. Who are you working with, and that it's not that you're not really a siloed situation, and list those partners and who those might be. Additionally, when you go to do your case statement, you can have your have it edited by someone who's a philanthropic giver that you know, that has high connections, and say, how does this feel? What does this look like? It also greases the path toward toward them being involved. And if they don't like what you're doing, then start from scratch, do it again. But make sure that those folks are involved, and if they're willing to edit for you. Okay, what is your plan? Make it very clear what your plan is for building or for recovering, or whatever it is that you're doing in your disaster. And then make it very clear what the need is. So the chart down here at the bottom has a very clear, this is what the total is, this is how much we've secured, and this is the unmet need part and where we're at. And so those pieces really drive home what's needed. And again, especially in this day and age with COVID and all of the changing pricing, use your rounded numbers, make it easy to understand. A lot of people try and do 0.88 cents, whatever. Don't make rounded numbers, large numbers that have enough of a buffer that you're not going to have to turn around and go back and ask and re-ask. Also, relationships are what really drive trust in fundraising. Fundraising is truly about trust in giving and receiving, and that you're going to do something beneficial with those funds. And it is about relationships. And so when you create your case statements, you can show those relationships. I love this one of one of the volunteer carpenters with one of the clients as the rebuild's happening. Also, don't just show your disaster photos. Make sure you show where you want to be, your vision and positive pieces within your case statement. A lot of people only talk about the disaster itself, the negative pieces of it. You want to show your vision. Next, don't be afraid, and it should be people-centric. And so, you know, I look at each one of these people in these pictures. I know exactly who they are, what they did for us and with us. And, you know, you can center in on people, because this is fundraising is a people response. It's not just a disaster response, it's a people response. And so you need to use those photos of key people. And then please make sure you have signed releases when you do it. They need to know what they're doing. When you take a photo of them, make sure that it's all part of their understanding when they sign releases to participate in any fundraising campaigns that you may have. Frequently asked questions. You need to provide a list. This is part of that editing piece. You can put out your case statement to multiple people and have them say, ask those questions. Have we answered all your questions? What should we be including? And that if you can include that, then you won't have to physically turn around and answer those questions yourself. Or you can reiterate on those as well. How to make your gift is critical. How you need to have several ways that they can make their gift, or how they can participate in whatever you're asking for in your fundraising, whether it's in kind or whether it's actual donations. And then you need to make it easy to give. All right, so again, whether it's a button on a website or the mail-ins or whatever anyone does, and there's so many options now, it gets a little overwhelming, but you need to include all of that. Okay, the other piece on case statements is you want to brand, and for your capital campaign, you want to brand. You want to have the same colors, the same feel throughout the campaign. And the reason for that is people know automatically what's happening. And so they know it's you and what you're trying to do. And so we kept the same color schemes and the same feel all the way through the last 6 years of our fundraising for our multiple fires and things. And I know Joplin Tornado was one of those that did a great job branding and in their fundraising. And so anyway, just keep that in mind. This case statement in total was 6-page booklet, and that was front to back. And so you need to make sure it's well edited. Even one mistake in it is a mistake in your case statement. Funders look at how diligent you are and how professional you are with the work that you're doing. And that, again, instills that confidence that you need. And so, again, just make sure those key philanthropic donors edit that. And then always print more copies than you think you need. We reuse that case statement way more than we thought we would, and because disaster does follow disaster, and so we tend to think, oh well, we can save a few bucks here and there, but in printing you can add quite a bit for very little. And so I encourage you to do the whole printing numbers. All right, for timing, you need to understand, and most of you do, I'm sure, that are on this conference, understand the journey of the stages of disaster. Where you decide to do your key fundraising, there's a lot of strategies around that. So anytime you're doing fundraising around the heroic stage there, it's pretty easy, right? So most of the fundraising or most of the money that comes in the relief and response stages and early long-term recovery are very quick, and it really is about, and that's about 10% of the total work. And you're looking at 80 to 90% of the remaining work that has to get done, and you have to fundraise for those remaining pieces. So how you go about making those campaigns to find the money that you need for disaster really depends on when you do it and how you do it. That 1-year anniversary is very common, and we had a lot of success in the 1-year anniversary around that. And again, we did not use the word anniversary, we used the word reflection, because it's not something you celebrate, but it is something you reflect on. And so So with that, as you go along, we'll talk about media and we'll talk about ways to maintain interest. But in this day and age right now, there's a lot of challenges with disaster fatigue and just so many options to donate right now, and so much disaster. So as I was saying, the 1 year reflection, you want to not pass that up. If you have a 1 year anniversary piece, that's that we were able to use some of our AmeriCorps teams in a parade to help with that. And again, this was all part of this matching campaign that was kind of the end of our total capital campaign. So it was all stacked up in an order, very strategically. So with the media, there's good and bad with media, but you need to keep things in the news. And so one of the things that I recommend to folks as they're starting to do trying to figure out their fundraising pieces is about every 2 weeks, you want to have some kind of a new or different angle from your story. A lot of times people want to say everything up front, get it over with. But what you want to do is kind of feed individual situational stories and key successes, difficulties or challenges, and have it on a timeline so that you can continue that narrative over time. So, and then you want to nurture these relationships with reporters and their camera folks. And I say camera folks because a lot of times the reporters get a lot of attention, and those camera folks make a lot of those decisions and get key pictures. And so again, this is all about telling your story, and with that comes interest, comes funding, and so on. So this is a picture of the first wall on the rebuild for the first home that was rebuilt in that area. But you want to respond quickly when they contact you. Be very quick. Their life is very quick. It's scheduled very quick, and try and get back to them quickly. And again, invite them to special events and key times. So pushing up the wall was one of those for us. Prepare before they arrive, and make sure that you have everybody lined out to meet with them ahead of time if you're doing key stories. And then, of course, don't embellish, and you need to make sure that you're not announcing any expectations that you cannot meet in media. And the reason I say this about the media piece, we had a $1,000 donor who that was the max that he had put in. After he saw our media clip after a year, that we still had need, and we programmed that, or that aired over in Seattle, and we're on Eastern Washington side. And he called me up and said, my wife and I would like to do a little bit more, possibly. And I was able, he asked me questions for about 5 minutes, and I knew every where we were at. I knew all the information about what we needed, what we were going to do. I answered him in 5 minutes, and he called back 5 minutes later and said, I will do the remaining $250,000 of what you need for your next phase of rebuilds. So you just don't ever know exactly what those kind of stories generate. And it really is important to keep those in the forefront, because that as long as that discussion is out there, you have the opportunity to get more funds. And we had the check within a week, and he's been a long time standing donor of ours for multiple projects in the future. I'm just checking on time. We're looking good so far. Do we have any questions up to this point?
Carlene, we did have one question that came through that was asking if you had any platforms or websites you suggest using over another for fundraising, and if that fits now or if that fits later, we can address it later if that's a better fitting time.
Okay, so I do have a couple of nonprofit folks that are platforms, and I did actually do credits to some of their descriptions within this presentation. And so you could go back and look at who those were and where those are. So, but I don't have them listed right here, right now. I just have it within my presentation, sorry. The other piece, I'm gonna go ahead and share with you, this is an 8-minute video. More than anything, if people can feel and understand what has happened in a disaster, they are 100 times more likely to share and give and re-talk your story. And so this is a video that really has, I did early on in our fires, and then updated after our 2015 fires. We burned, just so you know, over the last, in 14, 15, and 20, we've burned 1.5 million acres, and in 3 different declared disasters in 6 years. So we've been hit multiple times. It becomes a difficult piece to find that funding, and we've been able to do that to date. So this video, again, it was important for legislators. We were able to get funding at the city level for our water system in state appropriations, in community development block grant funding, and USDA rural development in the tune of $7.4 million for funding our burned water system. And again, people don't understand until they actually see it. So this is what this looks like.
Open 911, what is the address of your emergency? Hello, I live in French Creek, and I'm seeing to the west of me a really large plume of smoke. Wondering if that's been called in already. Okanon County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
I live down here in Carlton, just miles south of Carlton, and I got smoke coming up on the other side of the ridge, southeast of me.
A call from 260 C. Charles, Texas Creek, advising the flames are coming over the hill, approximately half a mile from their residence. Okanagan 911, what is the address of your emergency?
2031, Highway 153. Fires back up again. It's all in our stuff. Get ready to fire us out.
Okay, how close to the residence is it?
We're at the residence. It's there.
Okay, how close to the residence is it? Is it right up to the residence?
Yes.
Okay, I will let the fire crew know.
We're evacuating, so are the neighbors. There may be close to 100 homes on the chill list in danger at this moment.
Okay.
We're the last house on the road.
Yeah, Jerry.
Please send some help. Bye.
Hello? Take a deep breath. I need Jerry. Where is the fire from where you're at?
There is straight west of us on the hill above Cholmas Creek and parallel to the creek. Above the beaver ponds, the big meadow.
Above the beaver ponds?
The fire is parallel to the creek and above the beaver ponds.
How far is that from your house?
Huh?
How far is that from your house?
How far from the house? I would say quarter mile.
Quarter mile?
Yeah, maybe half at the most. And it's moving quickly this way. We spotted it break over the top.
When the stars go out, the timber's gone, but we are stronger than our fear. The homes we built are burning down to the ground, to the ground.
What is that? Severe emergency.
We are right downtown Pateras. We have assets that have fallen over on the commercial drive. They're shredded down. There's nobody over here.
Commercial drive. What's on fire there?
The brush along the railroad track.
Brush at the railroad tracks. Okay, hang on just a moment, okay? It was commercial street, brush igniting near the railroad track. 1942. Okay, what is your name, ma'am?
My name's Libby Harrison. I'm the mayor of Pateras here.
Libby Harrison?
Yes.
Okay, what's up on up to you, Libby?
Oh my gosh, there's another fire on the highway. They're popping up everywhere. We need somebody down here quick.
They're getting as much as they can.
I know. Oh my God. Okay.
Where's the other fire, Libby?
There's a fire. There's a fire in Yancey's storage.
Okay, I'm responding. Received a call from Nicole Vincent, 93 Curly Horse Drive. Advised her parents are hiding in the shower at that location for immediate.
Hi, Okanagan. I don't know if we can make it through. I was up there a little ways. Myself and 6 will be in route to attempt.
24. They said it's the large white residence you see.
We can't see anything down here past the front of our cars.
when the lights go out.
Okay, 911, what is the address of your emergency?
I'm in Pateras, Washington at the Lakeshore Inn. I have people stuck in the elevator and the fire's upon us. I need one of the emergency people to come pry it open for me.
Okay, they're stuck in the elevator?
Yes.
At the Lakeshore
And
Inn?
they've evacuated Pateras and we can't get it open.
And they've what?
Fire's right within me.
I'm sorry, I can't, you're yelling into the phone, I can't understand.
I'm sorry, it's really loud here. The fire is right next to us. We've evacuated the town and I'm the owner of the hotel.
The homes we built are burning down to the ground, to the ground. Wildfire raging through our town. The sheriff says we gotta get out. I can't believe it's real. Man on his rooftop praying songs. Our men on the mountain all night long. With nerves of stone. Take the pictures off the walls, take all you can. Call your folks and let them know. We'll be okay. The homes we built are burning down to the ground, to the rain coming down the mountainside. I'll hear the wind chimes sing all night.
So that is way more than I could ever say in something. And for any of you who have had disaster and you share those disaster pieces, if you can put that in a story where you can understand, where people can quickly and easily understand what that is worth more in the long run than anything else. We shared that video with every volunteer that came in as part of orientation. Most of those folks came back 7, 8, 9 times. We had a large church on the coast who brought heavy equipment at about $150,000 a pop each time they came over and did land work, prep for home sites and so on, 100% free. Those are all direct dollars, whether it's not truly fundraising necessarily, but it is. And so it's less money that you have to put out to do those things. So again, I really want to stress that this is about knowing your story and knowing that it's a long process that's continual and very challenging. But it isn't about just dollars. And if you make it just about dollars, you're not going to succeed as well. So just a couple of those final tips, as I just mentioned. Be strategic and know your story. Know it will be challenging. Share an update. Make sure you share an update. If you go out there and you do something and you make these emotional connections with people and you don't continue to foster those relationships, you are going to struggle. You will not continue to have things come your way and help your community. Also, make sure you thank your donors immediately. All right. Once those thank you letters need to be in the mail or some other form or a call or something within 48 hours after they come in. And so you have to have a system that will accommodate that and make that happen. And then just be genuine. Again, you're not a used car salesman. If you hire fundraisers that are professional fundraisers, sometimes you get that feel. This is about your story, your disaster, your community, and how are you going to help? So again, obviously I keep saying the same thing, don't I? Don't try to just raise money. Again, and then remember to give them an easy pathway and an opportunity to contribute, whether that's volunteerism. We've had over 2,000 volunteers in a 5-year window. We had over 2,000 volunteers, which generated 200,000 volunteer hours, which was the equivalent of $2 million at $20 an hour. So again, there's other ways to generate those funds. All right, so any questions or comments?
Yes, Carlene, we do have at least one question. And if we don't have others that pop in the chat box, I have a couple as well. But in relation to the video, one of the comments in here is a very powerful video. You mentioned you shared it with every volunteer that came in. Can you give some examples of other places where you showed it? Was a public service announcement? Was it on public television? Those kind of areas.
So that video was done privately, one-on-one each time. We did, well, we did have it at one point on the legislative in Olympia and with the legislators as well. But I kept that video because of the 911 calls, the personal piece to it. I went and others went one-on-one to share that. We did it across at least 30 to 40 different churches across the Pacific Northwest. As we were invited to come and inspire folks to contribute. And so I would say we're probably looking at, I mean, I've shown it hundreds of times. And every single time it's generated funds, whether it's even at conferences and things that I've done. People want to contribute to that. They understand now what people went through when they go through that. It's way different than having somebody come into your place after the disaster. When they go, now, where was the fire? Where was this? Where was that? They don't understand, right? They don't understand that it was total darkness in the middle of daytime when it should be totally light, what people were actually going through. So, but multiple churches, multiple events that we had. Yeah. That was kind of long-winded.
Great, thank you.
I'm not a speaker by any means.
Well, and it's been going on for a long time, and it's hard to sometimes remember details from years ago for what might have been taking place at the beginning versus, as you pointed out, maybe at those anniversary points when you're doing those reflections and how many years that passed that you're doing those reflections. So I think we can have a lot of leniency in remembering some of those details. For our participants on the call, I'd invite you to please share any questions. You can put them in the chat box, or if anyone would like to come off of mute and share those, we would welcome those. I'll wait just a moment and then I'll ask a question to you, Carlene.
Okay. I do want to say that that was not a professional video, obviously. I did that in my iMovie at home. And that was Brittany Jean's Wildfire song. So.
Wonderful. Well, okay, so a couple questions then I'll kind of put out there, and some of these might be a little bit in the weeds, but kind of coming back around to your fundraising team that you kind of mentioned at the beginning. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about who you pulled into that type of a team and how that dynamic worked together kind of at the beginning, but all the way through the process.
Yeah, we had, our county is very large, and it's very few people, but very large. It's the largest county in the state. And so we went all across the county and had nonprofits that came together that were part of those committees. And it was a little bit challenging at first because people want to hold their best funders to their heart, and not share very much. But what we did do is, when you had a kind of a unified voice, those meetings, we met weekly, of course, and then met every 2 weeks and then monthly. And over the course, I would say we probably had about 45 people involved in the total on the briefing piece of things. And then when it got down to specific asks and the way that we went after certain funders, we did it in groups of 3. You don't want to ever go more than typically groups of 3 to go do your large asks. So like our first ask was to a large Apple company, and we got $250,000 there, right? And then you leverage that and you say, you know, we have some folks here, we've gotten this piece, but we're still missing this piece. You know, can you help us out here? So, and then we had events as well. We had fundraising events where they get schmoozed a little bit. And our nonprofit towns in Twisp and Winthrop were very good at this already. So, did I answer your question?
That's very helpful. Yes, you did. And I don't see any others popping into the chat box. So I will just take that opportunity to ask all of Lori's questions to Carlene right now. So I'll kind of come back to you with another question. And this is a little bit of a different spin from what you were covering a little bit, because I want to ask about some collaboration pieces, or maybe it kind of ties in. But you were mentioning, you know, ensure you have data, but ensure that it's accurate data, and how these funds are going to be used, you know, kind of looking towards the vision of the future, and not only the devastation that's occurred, but where's the vision and where you're going with it. So to me, kind of in my role, I liken that to how the fundraising piece ties into a long-term recovery group and the overall vision of that recovery process. You also mentioned, this is a long-winded question, but you also mentioned community block grants and a variety of other, I think you mentioned a rural economic component in there and some others, which lead into state funding and other components. So I'm kind of curious on that picture when you have such a broad fundraising that brings in not just the private donations, but you also are aware of other funding pieces. It seems like a big piece to tie into your long-term recovery group, or that component in there. So I'm just kind of curious how the two, how does the fundraising fit into that picture?
Yeah, so we did our fundraising. We had 2 channels. One, of course, your individual and your community. And so on our community side, we did advocacy discussions and talks. And so those advocacy pieces generated funds that were going to make us more resilient overall. So it was the larger picture discussions and asks for funding. On the individual side, that was all the capital campaign, the matching campaigns, the individual asks. And so they were 2 pathways that we had within our long-term recovery group. Now the actual elected officials and so on were the folks that actually did those asks in terms of the city. And I just happened to end up in that role later on. And so after the fires. And so I got to make those asks in Olympia, and it was over several years. So you have to make a state appropriation ask for so much, and then another. The CDBG-DR funding was $2.7 million, but you had, again, you just keep saying the same thing. If you have the same talking points and you keep saying the same thing and expressing the same need every time, then you will eventually get what you need. If you vary, if one day you're, oh, I need 2 million, the next day I need 5 million, you won't get anything, because people won't trust in that.
Sure, yes, that makes a lot of sense. It does, thank you. I know I gave you kind of a interesting question in there, so thank you.
And the USDA rural grant, we did at 1.7 million of the total 7.4 million, and that was at a 1.9% interest rate. So you want to look for those opportunities. Those are built into your municipalities. So your municipalities need to tap in those pieces So you're not, from the long-term recovery side, you're not shouldering the only burdens, right?
Oh, sure, makes a lot of sense. So I'll open up kind of one final time for any questions that folks might have. All right, one just came in, Carlene. It says a more specific question. Do you have a breakdown of where your donors' fundraising was generated from, such as private philanthropy, business, corporate, individual, government, federal, state, other? And if so, this individual who's with, I believe, the community foundation, one of the community foundations, would be interested in following up with you later.
That's a very good question. I do not have that breakdown right now. And unfortunately, we've had this stacking up of one disaster after another. So feels like we're always doing the meat and potatoes of things. But our community foundation of North Central Washington was our fiscal sponsor to start with. And I could give you some of those. I don't have them in writing, but I do have those if you wanted to circle back around with me.
She's replied that she can relate to that for sure. So I'll get the two of you connected together, and then you can continue that conversation going forward. And there was just a comment that was also put into the chat box of many of the grant opportunities are not necessarily disaster related either, but can be kind of brought into that.
You know, that's a very good point, especially with COVID right now, the funding this last year for the 2020 fires. There were multiple grant pieces there. And our grant funding came much later, although it came through our partners originally. So all of like UMCOR and Salvation Army and all of our players that were at the table, which were about 23 different agencies and groups, all of those folks had grant funding through their organizations, and we partnered in a matrix on the rebuilds and the needed costs. So it's not real simple. Yeah, there's multiple factors, but
yeah, for sure. Well, it is 3:28. I think we were right at the end of our session. So I want to take that opportunity to thank you, Carlene, for being here today, talking through this really important topic that sometimes we don't really start approaching until the disaster happens. So this is a great way for us within Iowa and anyone else who's participating from outside the state to get some ideas and tips to start those conversations when we leave today and we go back to our organization. So thank you very much, Carlene. It was a pleasure to have you here today. And thank you all of our participants. I would just like to say one final thing to welcome you all, or invite you all to join us tomorrow morning, 8:30. We'll start our daily kickoff for the day using the same Zoom link that we have today. Thank you, everyone.
thank you, Lori.